What is the crack, folks? Andy Calder, your host, as always, here on the Gym Advisors podcast. Today's episode is the first in a series of episodes that we're going to do to celebrate the launch of our new online fitness section. We plan on having that section live the day this goes out. So if you're listening to this on the day or anytime after March 30th, whenever you're watching, wherever you're listening to this, if you're looking for someone to help you reach your fitness goals, whether you want to gain some strength, want to lose some weight, whether it's something to do with your mental health or just physical health in general, just open up a new tab, head on over to thegymadvisors.ie/online-fitness. We answer a maximum of 6 multiple choice questions, and we'll instantly show you the profiles of online coaches and online instructors who are perfectly suited to get you where you want to be. No messing, no waiting, no fuss, just fitness simplified. On to today's episode. This was recorded a few weeks ago, actually on Paddy's Day, as you'll hear very early in the episode. It hasn't aged a day, and I couldn't have asked for a better guest to launch a series than Cillian Lewins. Cillian is originally from Dublin, but he's actually living no more than 10-15 minutes up the road from us here in County Sligo. But of course, we still recorded via Zoom and online because we're responsible human beings. This chat really takes it all in, from Cillian's definition of online coaching, the differences between online and in-person personal training, and then how and why he kind of monitors and tracks a broad range of variables rather than just relying on the scales or any other one indicator of health and fitness. Oh, and then we finish by launching our very own playlist. From now on, we're going to ask all of our guests to give us 3 songs that are always on repeat when they're working out, and we're going to publish this on a playlist on Spotify, so you can enjoy these tunes. It's going to be a wild one. We've recorded 3 episodes and they're already in the can. The playlist is going to be full of different genres, different tempos. Genuinely can't wait to see what it looks like in a few months' time when we've had a load of different people add their selections. Cillian does kick us off with some absolute bangers, so once you've listened to the episode, make sure and go follow that playlist over on Spotify. But for now though, whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or even on thegymadvisors.ie/podcast, where you can listen to it ad-free, strap in. This is a good one. Cillian, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you keeping, Andy?
I'm good, man. And a very quick sneak behind the sneak, and a very quick look behind the curtain. Jeez, we're starting very, very early. We're recording this on Paddy's Day. How professional are we? We're bloody amazing.
Are we professional or daft?
One or the other. Professionally daft. I think that's what I get paid for. Yeah. Look, Cillian, forgive my nonsense. Tell me this. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, geez, where to start? So, my name's Cillian. I'm obviously a personal trainer, online coach. Like many, the pandemic has forced me to adjust and change and go with the flow a little bit. So, training, nutrition, all that has kind of upped itself a gear. The free time I've taken full advantage of. Personally, I got into the industry 3 to 4 years ago. Originally worked in Microsoft, coming out of leaving cert. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in college. Got offered a job in Microsoft for 2 months, and 8 years later, I was still there. So I was kind of like, as I got to about the 6th or 7th year, I was like, geez, I don't know if I want to do this forever. Like, it was a great job, but just wasn't me. I always played sport growing up. I was always active, and ironically enough, now I'm sitting at a desk, but then sitting at a desk all day was torture to me. Working 9 to 5, and yeah, so I kind of did my PT cert on the side. Got into a little bit of coaching part-time then while I was working in Microsoft, and just fell in love with it. So then I'd say the first year and a half, I made every mistake possible as a trainer. Decided to jump ship way too early. Found myself going, I don't have enough clients here or whatever. So eventually I was renting a space in the gym. Decided, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it right. I need to start from the bottom. So got a job in a leisure centre, really high-end leisure centre in Dublin, or leisure facility. Started from the ground up there, did kind of 3 to 4 months of just basic floor work, learning the ins and outs, and yeah, from there just kind of grew and grew. The more I do it, the more I fall in love with it. So that's kind of led me to this point now.
That's a class place to be, and it's funny the way you say that you got a job for 2 months and 8 years later. I was the exact same scenario. In a factory here in Sligo town. Came out of college, no jobs going in the area that I wanted to go. Got a 3 month kind of bridge job, and then 5 years later, you're still in the same spot, and you're like, "How the fuck did that happen?"
yeah. And it goes by so quick, you don't even realize.
Yeah, and it's a good old analogy for fitness and stuff, because you can just let things slide, and you
Oh
look back
yes,
at
yeah,
in 5-10 years time, you're like, Jesus, what did I do? So like I said, like when we talk about fitness, is always talk about planning and making sure everything is perfect, but action and doing something. And look, you said you jumped ship too early, but like at least you took a step. It was a brave step, and it has worked out in the very end. It's class.
yeah. Well, that's the one thing I'll say to a lot of people is like anyone who is hesitant to take a leap, whether it's fitness related or a job or a switch in lifestyle, whatever it is, like just go for it. Like you can try, and if you fail, you fail. At least you can always go back to where you are. But you can if 10 years from now I decided, oh, I wish I had tried personal training. I'm sure it's probably too late then when you're married, mortgage, kids. You have all these other responsibilities that when I took the jump, I'd only just started kind of seeing my fiance now. So at that stage, I didn't really have any responsibility, so I could get away with it. Like having being broke for a couple of months didn't affect me that much because I didn't have bills and mortgages to pay. Whereas now I'm at the stage like I've built up a business. I'm fairly stable, still looking to obviously grow, but you have to take that initial jump. Like you'll never know. And the worst thing about like it was something that was on my mind for a year or two beforehand. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, why am I doing this? Like, what do I have to lose? Like, what's the worst that happens? It fails, and I go, okay, it didn't work out. I'll get a job somewhere else, and I can fall back on what I've done in the past. So, like, the thing with most people is like when it comes to their fitness, they're always, I see with a lot of clients is like, oh, I'm nervous to start. I don't really know what I'm doing. It's like, that's why you're coming to me. That's my job to help you. Like the old analogy, I'm sure other trainers have heard. It's like, oh, I'm going to get in shape first, and then I'll come to you. It's like, well, why not just come to me now? I'll get you there faster. Like that's what you're literally coming to me for. You're not coming to me to be judged. You're coming to me for help in helping you reach whatever your goal is. I think that obviously that's not to kind of shit on the industry, but obviously there are poor coaches out there that will be like, no, this is the only way I do it. You have to do it this way, and you have like your cookie cutter programs, your terrible diets, all this that don't match the individual. And I'm very much like, okay, what can you commit to start off with? It's like, oh well, I can only commit to one session a week and maybe one walk. Perfect. That's one more than you were doing last week. Start with that. You'll build from there. And it's just taking that initial leap with anything. It's like once you take it, you'll find that you'll just end up steamrolling, and it works out in the end if you're committed to it. But as you say, just that initial step is you just have to take action first.
I love everything you've said there, but like anyone who's watching the YouTube of this, or even anyone who knows me will know I was smiling away as you were talking about the cookie cutter plans and all that sort of stuff, because they're like, that is so true in terms of there's so many great coaches out there, and the stuff that's there on social media and it takes up a big volume of what we hear about and what we talk about, but it's very little in the industry. There's a lot of great coaches who aren't doing that stuff, and they're not the ones who are getting recognized, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. I do want to talk about online coaching, but and I do want to talk about your approach to online coaching and what you're doing now. But before we dive a little bit into that, can you tell me a little bit, what's your definition of online coaching? What does it mean to you when someone says they're an online coach, or someone says they're looking for an online coach?
So to me, online coaching really relies on that second word, coaching. For me personally, I do think there's a difference between a trainer and a coach. Like for me, a trainer is you go into a gym, you do 1-2 sessions with them a week, and you don't see them after that. My philosophy of coaching is I want to try and educate my clients as best as I can. Like I'll be the first to say I'm not the smartest trainer, but one thing I'll always do is I'll always continuously upskill and up-educate myself to try and get as much information as I can to kind of realize and go, oh, do you know what? I used to do that with a client. I was stupid for doing that. That's just, wildly inaccurate what I was doing. Let's, take the example of carbs. How many people do you know like, oh, don't eat carbs after 6 p.m.? Or this magic cutoff time that suddenly your body's just going to go, oh, no, you're not actually 50 grams of carbs anymore. You're 500. Oh, Jesus, no, store that fat quick. This nonsense that's out there. And it's like, unfortunately, there's innocent people who will believe that because they don't really know. They don't have the education that you as a coach should have. And there's a lot of coaches who will get into the industry and they're like, oh yeah, this worked for me once. I'm just going to do this for every client. It's like, it doesn't work for everyone. Like how I train and how I diet, or I'm prepping for a show at the moment in September. All things going according to plan. Like, so how I train, how I diet, how I do cardio doesn't work for Mary, who's a mother of 3 and works a full-time job, where she has to be in an office at 9 to 5. Like I'm lucky enough that I work for myself, so I can go, right, at between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, I'm going to do a podcast. And then from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'm going to do, 10 check-ins. And then from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I'm going to train. And I can structure my day around me and what I want. A lot of people don't have that luxury. So then when it comes to coaching, it's like, right, well, I know how, if we get somebody in a calorie deficit for long enough, they're going to drop body fat. How can I get the individual in a calorie deficit without impacting their life in a extreme manner? I often see like people go to trainers and like I've seen some trainers putting people on like contest prep diets who want to lose 10 pounds. And it's like they come back and it's like they're exhausted and they're worn out and their relationship's suffering. They're not getting on well at work because they have no energy. And it's like, oh, what are you doing? It's like, oh, well, this is the diet I was on. It's like, right, well, stop. Why you like eating 1,200 calories a day? It's like you're 16 stone right now. It's like, yeah, you've lost 2 stone, fair play, but like you're on 1,200 calories. You're not helping yourself. And it's that whole thing that's like, I don't understand why people go to such, I don't say that not people go to such extremes, but why coaches won't educate themselves on it. It's like at the end of the day, like the way I look at my job is somebody is coming to you and putting their health in your hands. You have a responsibility to, now I'm not saying like obviously you're not going to know everything. You're always going to be learning and upskilling yourself, but you should be making a conscious effort to try your best to make sure that you can get somebody in to, whatever the goal is, as healthily as possible. And I'm not just talking about kind of fat loss. Like if somebody wants to, I've had clients come to me where like they're sick of being called skinny. Like, you get a young lad who's 18, 19 years of age and he's naturally lean and, fighting so hard to build muscle. It's like, I'm going to the gym. I don't know why I'm not building muscle. It's like, I'm sick of lads kind of looking at me going, oh, geez, you're not filling your top. But, everyone has their reason. It's like your job as a coach to go, okay, here's the individual in front of me. Here's my, all the knowledge I have. How can I take bits from here, apply them to this individual and help them get there as smoothly as possible? Now, obviously, there's going to be, that's a very simplistic way of telling it, but like, obviously, everyone's going to have ups and downs. There's going to be stress in life. There's going to be, working with the parents, kids get sick. These things happen and you have to allow for that as well. Like, one thing I see is a lot of coaches like, oh, if there's 16 weeks of training, it's sorted here. It's like, all right, great, but what happens if her son gets sick for 2 weeks and she can't, her nutrition slips and, she can't make the sessions that she wants? Like, how are you going to help her to get through that part? And like, oh, what do you mean? She'll just have to book up. It's like, well, she can't book up. She's a mother. Her child is more important to her than she is. So how are you going to help educate her so that she can make conscious efforts when she's going through that? So something as simple as, okay, yeah, you might not have the time to track your calories or whatever your approach is, but prioritize protein in your nutrition. Prioritize your fruits and veg. Make sure you're still looking after yourself first so that you can help your child. And there's all these factors that go into it. I think like people just don't take into consideration. It's like, oh no, you're coming to me to get in shape. Grand, I want you to be 100% committed like a professional bodybuilder. It's like, they're not going to be. Like, it's the reality. They're not. Like, yes, you're passionate about training, but this individual might not be passionate about training. They're just unhappy with their life, so they need ways to fix it or ways to change it. It's like, okay, well, how can I get them? Oh, you love walking. Get out, walk more. You don't have to go to the gym. You hate going to the gym, grand. We'll train once a week where we help you improve your strength because you've lower back issues or, you've tight hips. We'll do a bit of mobility. But get out and walk. Do something that you love to do. Like, it doesn't have to always be, you have to be in the gym doing 10 by 10 German volume training. It's like, that doesn't work for everyone. Like, so if you're an 18-year-old kid who has the free time, fair enough, have at it. But if you're a busy parent or, whatever it is, like, everything has to be adapted to the individual. And that's what I'll always try to do is like with my coaching is, especially for online now, like I have like an education portal where I do everything through Google Drive. Everyone has access to this folder. I have subfolders of mindset, nutrition, training, sleep. I'm recently working on a female physiology one so that, females can understand like, well, your cycle plays a big role in your week to week weight. That's why like, how many times do you see females like, oh, I started dieting like 3 weeks in, it's like I gained 3 pounds. It's like, well, yeah, because you're going through your menstrual cycle. It's not that you've gained 3 pounds of fat. It's like you're in your luteal phase of your cycle where your body temperature's gone up, your BMR's gone up, you're trying to restrict your calories, but because your BMR's gone up, your cravings have gone up, and then you binge eat because you don't realize, well, if you actually increase your calories by 150 to 200 for that week, you'd probably stay pretty smooth through it. Like, yes, there's still a little bit of willpower that's needed, but giving yourself that extra few calories because your BMR's increased for that week, having that understanding. Where like now I have some clients who've been working with me long term who don't even come to me anymore. They're just like, with their check-ins, like, oh yeah, period's due this week, so I increased my calories by 150. I'm like, yeah, perfect, grand, no bother. And they continue on, and they use me more of just a check-in and accountability, as opposed to, after a while they get to the hang of it and they're like, yeah, so my period's coming again, what do I do? I was like, well, sure, this is what 8 months we've been together, you know what to do. It's like, oh yeah, you're right, I do actually. I did that instinctively. It's like, there, perfect. And that's what I look for. It's just educate as best as you can.
That must be, and this isn't something like that must be really a really satisfying feeling when someone is going and doing it for themselves, as opposed to coming and asking you for the answer every single time, and you've kind of ingrained that behavior and that thought process. That must be amazing.
Well, that's it. Like it's a big thing that, like, when I talk about a kind of mindset with my clients, it's like, what are your habits? Like, what habits have led you to the point where you feel you needed to come to me for help? It's like, oh well, like, it's, oh, I've gained weight. It's like, okay, why did you gain weight? What are you doing day to day? Like, is your day to day, like, a lot of, and especially with Instagram, like I love Instagram, but there's times I absolutely despise it because you just see such BS on it, and it's like, it's just like, how many fit spots do you see, like, oh, drink this fit tea? It's just like, that fit tea is not going to do shit for you. You haven't addressed all your issues. So as soon as you stop drinking that fit tea, you could do fit tea for 2 weeks and you'll lose weight because you're literally just drinking water, like flavored water, where you're getting no nutrients. You're going to be exhausted. Yes, you'll lose weight, but as soon as you stop it, you're going to go back to your old habits where you're going to regain that weight and not more, because you've now restricted for, a period of time where you just go, for lack of a better term, ape shit and just go nuts. Like, it's that sort of thing. I'm just like, well, if you educate the individual and break it down to them, yes, it's going to take time. Like, I'll have, like, I have a client started with me 2 months ago, and he literally said to me last night, I don't understand how you have so much patience. Like, well, you don't understand what you're doing. Like, you're like, I think a lot of people will hold themselves to the standard of the coach. And it's like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm still learning. I have my own coach. I'm learning from him. He teaches me, and I can then pass more on to my clients because I'm learning that process as well. As I'm not just the coach, I'm also the client as well in another area. But it's that sort of thing where it's like, well, I don't expect you to know all this straight away. Like, it's going to take you, like, realistically, it takes somebody the best part of 6 months to a year to learn how to improve all these habits and enforce them consistently. Whereas you look at Instagram, it's like, oh, 6 weeks to abs. It's just like, well, that's great if you're in a position where all you need to diet is for 6 weeks. If you're somebody who is, 40% body fat and, is, being told by their doctors, like, if you don't do something now, you're at risk of a heart attack. But that individual is not going to, in 6 weeks, change that around. Or what he'll do is he'll go flat out for 6 weeks, hit a target, and then go, oh, grand. But realistically, he's only dropped like 10% body fat or whatever. And then he goes back to the doctor. It's like, oh, I did it. So it's like, yeah, but you need to keep going. You need to improve your habits. All you've done is restricted. You haven't addressed your sleep. You haven't addressed your NEAT, your daily movements. You haven't addressed your nutrition. You're still not eating vegetables. You're not drinking enough water. You haven't managed your stress. You're still working 14-hour days on a laptop where you don't get outside. Like, there's all these factors that I'm just like, right, well, what if we just educate the individuals on these factors, give them the information, and then they can address it to their lives and work it around them and give them the tools they need, as opposed to like one thing I'll always say is, like, clients come to me and it's like, oh, geez, thank you for all your help. It's like, I just guide you, you do the work. And that's literally how I feel like coaches, like, you guide them, you communicate with them. If they have questions, fire them across. Like, the one thing I'll always say to them is, like, look, you have my number on WhatsApp. If you have questions, don't wait for your weekly check-in. Fire them across me straight away. I'd much rather you message me and go, oh, I've had this issue today. It's like, Grant, here's what I want you to do, or here's how we can address it. Move on, as opposed to waiting 6 days for your check-in and then going, oh, well, you've had 6 days there where you've had that same issue over and over again. Why did you just message me the first day? And again, it takes a little bit of time. Obviously, you have to build a relationship there with the client, but ultimately, for me as a coach, is just educate. It's funny because I hated school, but there's times I just feel like the annoying teacher. It's like, oh, I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'm going to help you towards it, sort of thing. It's just like, oh yeah, sound, how that's come full circle for me. So, yeah.
I do love that, though. I love the fact to talk about the education. I think that's bloody amazing. The other thing that you mentioned as well that I found really interesting was just giving tools, because we're launching this online coaching section of the site, online fitness section of the site, and I reached out to a couple of our members and we got messages back about what they thought online coaching was, and one of them kind of talked around the idea of, look, all of the information you need in the world in terms of fitness, in terms of health, is on the internet. It's on social media. It's on whatever you want.
Yeah.
But there's too much. Trying to figure out what works for you is basically impossible for someone, especially for someone who is not experienced in the field. So the coach's job then is to structure that information in such a way that you can get the most bang for your buck out of your sessions and out of your life, basically. That you're not just there, I've got all this information, what the fuck do I do with it? Like you said, you're being given the tools, you know. So come here, tell me this. We're as I said, we're recording this on Paddy's Day. This time last year, the world was almost a different place. So over a year ago, the world was a very different place. Were you an online coach before COVID?
Yes, but not in the same capacity as now. So like for me, I was always kind of one-to-one since I started. Online coaching was always something I wanted to get into. Like the business mind in me, I guess you can say, was always like, okay, well, how can I, like, you know, as much as I love my job being one-to-one, I don't want to be doing like 60 hours a week on the gym floor. How can I still do this and help other people with, you know, more free time for myself? Because ultimately, like, that's everyone wants that. Like, you know, let's be honest, we don't want to be spending 67 hours a week glued to a laptop all the time. Like, I love my job, but I also want to be able to go for a cup of coffee with my fiance when I want, or, you know, have that bit of freedom. So I'd started doing a small bit. I can remember I worked with one young lad up in Dublin. He came to me and asked, did I do it? And at that stage, I hadn't done it, but I was thinking about it. So I said, look, I tell you what, I'll train you for, I think it was 2 or 3 months for free online. And like, I was completely honest with him. I said, look, I haven't done this before. Can I use you as a guinea pig? Essentially. And he was like, yeah, no bother. I'll happily do it. And I was like, okay, perfect, grand. So I kind of got him set up. At that moment in time, it was all just through email. So basically had an Excel sheet, did his programming, send him an email every week, practically going, how are you getting on? Here's a little questionnaire, give me some feedback, and we'll adjust your program each week. Did that. 12 weeks later, I think it was 12 weeks, he, as he said, it's like he had abs for the first time he ever got them. I was like, okay, there's something here. No, like, and I was, at that stage, it was very, very straightforward. Literally, here's a program. You shoot me any questions anytime, check in once a week, and that was it. Very, very basic. And I was like, okay, there's something here. So how can I kind of build on that? And started to get, as it kind of went through, just built more structures with it, to the point where I am now, where I literally everything's on Google Drive. Like, the tracking process is so much easier. The setup process is better. Whereas, like, you know, I was kind of looking at going, like, okay, how can I make it easier for the client, but also that they don't feel they have to come to me asking, you know, silly questions all the time. Like, and I'll always say, it's like, there's no silly questions, but like, we all be in that position where, like, you kind of feel like you should know the answer to something, and you don't, but you're kind of like, oh, should I ask? Should I not? It's like, how can I get that out of the head right away? So it's like, okay, great, well, we can look at like a welcome pack. It's like when they sign up, you know, we have a free consultation call, just have a little chat, similar, like, you know, like this, see what the goals are, what they're looking to get out of it, what they think is involved, and just kind of take away any confusion. First of all, get them set up with a consultation form. Once they get that back to me, I'll send them a welcome pack, which will basically just detail what's, you know, a little bit more detail what to be expected with the online coaching, any equipment they'll need. You know, I'll always get them to track calories at the start. Some people have moved off it because they just get to the point where they don't need to track them anymore. Some people need a little longer on it just because they, you know, it just depends on the individual. But I'll always get them tracking calories at the start because I feel like you need to have a basic understanding of what you're consuming. And so many people nowadays just don't understand calories that are in food. Like, I think it's something that should be taught a lot more in school. Like, I think the health in this country would go through the roof if we actually got educated on it. Like, it's one of those things. I just think everyone should have a basic understanding of nutrition. And yeah, so I'll send them the welcome pack, nutrition guide, breaking down like what I expect from nutrition in terms of, we'll use tracking calories, we'll have a little bit of flexibility. Yes, I want you to obviously hit your healthy foods, your fruits, veg, good lean sources of protein, but, you know, a bar of chocolate is not going to make you fat. You know, if you want to have a bit of ice cream at the weekend, have it. If you want to have a glass of wine, you can fit that in. You can have that flexibility. We can, you know, one thing I actually have with a client now is on a Friday evening. I think it's a Friday evening. She enjoys, like, she makes homemade fajitas with her fiance, and they have a couple of glasses of wine. She's like, I don't want to give that up. I was like, okay, perfect. Well, what we do is Monday to Thursday, we'll pull your calories down a little lower. We'll give you extra calories on a Friday night so you can fit that in, still kind of see results. And like, her body composition is improving massively with this still going on, and she hasn't had to give that up. That was like one thing she says, I don't want to give that up. And I said, okay, perfect. Here's how we're going to work around it. Are you comfortable with that? She's like, yeah, that's perfect. Grand. So there's always ways around it. And again, it's why I'm like with the flexibility things, like, it might sound funny come from me since I'm training to step on stage, but like, unless you're training to step on stage or do a photo shoot, you don't need to be, 100% rigid. Yes, there has to be a diet aspect to it, but you can still have a little bit of flexibility that you can enjoy your life. Like, it shouldn't, like, unless you are somebody who's 100% dedicated to training, it shouldn't be your whole life. It should be part of your life. It should be healthy life habits that allow you to, see the results you want, be healthy, be happy, have good energy, good sleep, lower stress, and still be able to enjoy fajitas on a Friday night. And it's funny because I do see, it's like, just clients have come to me. It's like, I have one client who went to Slimming World, and I was like, how did you find Slimming World? She's like, I'll be honest, it didn't suit me. I was like, okay, why? Now, I'm not going to get into Slimming World because I think anyone who knows, like, anyone who knows me knows my thoughts on Slimming World. If you start me, I won't stop. But she kind of came to me and said, like, I just really didn't work for me. It's like, I really struggled with any foods that like were sins. And I was like, okay, so do you know why? She's like, I don't know. I was like, well, because you restricted them. She's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, remember when you were a child and your mum said, don't touch that? All you wanted to do was touch whatever that object was. Well, that's essentially what Slimming World do. They get these sins on certain products and go, you can't have that. And like, to make things worse now, I'll probably go to a rabbit hole now, but to make things worse, they then bring out their own brand of that product and say, oh no, that's okay to have. It tends to be higher calories and more expensive. But no, you can't have this one because that yogurt's bad. But our yogurt, which is essentially the same with higher calories and double the price, it's okay. So yeah, that's another pet peeve of mine with Slimware. But again, it's that whole mentality that as soon as you tell somebody they can't have something, well, you're human. Instinctively, you're going to want it. It's like if somebody turned around to me and said, like, I have weights at home that I can train with. So if somebody turned around to me and go, you're not allowed to train at all, I'd lose my mind. I'd be like, what do you mean? That's the one thing I enjoy doing. Why can't I do it? It's essentially the same with the people who's like, I enjoy chocolate. Well, why can't I have it? Like, I tell my clients all the time, like, I eat chocolate probably every day. Do I binge on it? No, because I'm not restricting it. I'm working it into my nutrition. I'm still eating my fruit and veg every day. I'm still eating my protein. I'm eating everything I need in terms of a health point of view, but I'm also having that balance where it's like, yeah, I'll sit down and have a cup of tea and a chocolate bar with, watching the TV when I put my feet up in the evening. Like, it's that balance, and it's just understanding that you can do these things and still work forward. And yeah, like, I kind of got off a bit of a tangent there for Slimming World, but like,
I'll tell you now, Cillian, it took all the restraint I have ever built up in my life not to jump in and start both of us going off on a rant about certain groups or whatever. So I won't jump in. But apart from the kind of the obvious money grab that's there in terms of buy this product because it's better despite it not clearly not being better, and that kind of how that targets and uses the people who are their target market. The difference between those groups and the online coaching side of things, or any sort of coaching, whether it's one-to-one or whatever, is that individualized piece. So that I can come on here, we can talk about myself and yourself can have a chat. If I was coming to you as a client, you can say, look, what are your goals, what's your life like, all that sort of stuff. Whereas a group, regardless of what it is, whether it's the Slimming World or any of those kind of weight loss clubs, they're going to say X, Y, Z. You're a 15 stone man who wants to get down to 12 stone. You're a 10 stone woman who wants to get down to 7, 8 stone, whatever number you have. And these are the exact calories you can both have, and these are the exact sins that you can have. And just those words, it just annoys. Two rants over.
I was pulling back there as well, but but the thing is though, when you sit down and you talk about it and you think about that, like as you just said, like you've just given two completely different scenarios, two different sexes, two different weights, two different kind of targets, but you're going to be on the same amount of calories and the same amount of sins. And then that, like as you kind of said, that word sin there, it's like, no wonder so many people have issues with nutrition when they're told their whole lives, like, that's bad, that's good, that's this. It's like, food is essentially food at the end of the day. Like, yes, we are looking at, some foods are higher in nutrients, some are lower in nutrients, some are higher in calories, some are lower in calories. That's where we educate people on it. It's like, yeah, it's like, look, you can have a piece of chocolate. It's like, yeah, like, just be aware that, like, this, what was it? At Christmas time, we were looking at Toblerone. So I love, like, the white Toblerone bars. I love them. But, like, the big ones, the square of them have, like, I think it's like 12 grams of fat in one square, which for the size of it is really high. Now, most people look at that going, oh no, you shouldn't have that. It's like, well, if you're having somebody, let's say like me, for example, my target is like 70 or 80 grams of fat a day. If I'm like, now this is in a dieting phase, like come Christmas time, over Christmas time, I was like, it's Christmas, I'm enjoying myself. Stop. Like, you don't have to be anal all year round. Like, you have a life to live as well. A couple of days is not like, unless you are like somebody who like literally decides to melt and drink Ben and Jerry's ice creams 10 times a day, you're not going to get a whole lot of fat over Christmas. A little bit of water weight, maybe a pound or two. But once you're back into your routine, that'll go. But the thing with the Toblerones is like they're 12, 15 grams of fat a square or triangle. And I'm like, grand, I can have one or two of them. It's, let's say, 24 grams of fat. I can just eat a little leaner. Instead of having beef that day, I'll have turkey, where it's cutting down my fat there. And like at the end of the day, it still balances out. It's just like, right, grand, I had a bit of chocolate, I enjoyed it, I still hit my health markers or whatever, and you can get on with your life then. And it's that sort of thing where like Slimming World, it's like, oh, it's a sin. It's just like, well, no, it's not. It's not. I never took an oath to say I wouldn't do these things. I'm not in mass where like the reverend is going, thou shalt not do that. It's like, it's a bit of chocolate. Get over yourself, love. Like, you move on with it. Enjoy it. Like, life is there to be lived as well. And it's fine for me. It is fine, that sweet spot. Obviously, this is very individual. Some individuals, if you were to tell them, like, oh, you can have chocolate, but like monitor it. You have to know yourself as an individual. Go like there's certain bits of chocolate I know myself. Like, if I'm dieting, I can't have them in the house. Like, if I'm dieting right now, if you put like the Kinder sticks in my house right now, like the 16 pack, that 16 pack is being eaten in 10 minutes. Like, I'll tell you right now, I'll be 100%. I have great willpower, but I will be just like, no, I love that chocolate far too much. So if I want that, I was like, all right, well, I'll buy a single one or a smaller pack and dead space it out. And it's about knowing yourself at times as well. Like, some people will have certain foods that just like that, they're just straight away. It's like everyone has them. Like, I find it very hard to believe if anyone tries to be like, oh no, I can eat 100% clean all year round. It's just like, well, you're probably miserable then as well. Like, it's that sort of thing. And it's it probably get me off to another tangent. Like, with Instagram, there's this whole, I'm a fitspo and I train like a bodybuilder and I eat like this to look like that. It's like, well, yeah, you have to, because that's how you make a living. Like, if you're making, if you look at like any fitness Instagrammer who has sponsorship deals where they need to be relatively lean all year round, we won't talk about the fact that most of them are probably on steroids as well in the background. That's another one as well. There's all these factors going into it that, like, well, that individual has to eat that way because, well, if he's above 12% body fat, his sponsor isn't going to pay him because, oh, we want you for a photo shoot next week, you need to be ready. Whereas, if you want to live your life and just be, happy, healthy, strong, you don't need to go to those extremes. You just don't. Like, if you're, now again, this is obviously person dependent, time frame, there's a lot of other factors that go into it. It's very generalized, but like, you can still enjoy your life, lose weight, improve your health, improve your fitness, and still have a bit of chocolate. Like, oh, it's a sin. No, it's not. It really isn't.
And unless this is the way I've come to think about it since doing this podcast and talking to people like yourself, is that the idea behind exercise, it should be allowing you to live a life and not worry about it else. If you are a fitness model, whatever, you have the 24 hours in the day and it's dedicated to becoming looking as well, or whatever way you want to phrase it. But when you have at least a 9-to-5 job, couple of kids or whatever, the exercise that you do should allow you to kind of live a healthier, longer and happier life, and not just be complete to be all and end all, and then you end up trying to make it the be all and end all, and then you fall off the wagon and you're miserable for, like you said, for 3 months or whatever, and then you eventually come back and hopefully you make the right decision this time, instead of going to Slimming World or whatever, but you get online, you get a coach like Cillian, or you get even just going to classes or whatever it will be, but just something that is set up to help you rather than make you feel like shit while you're trying to improve your life. And that's kind of like, if we talk about the journey and the destination, that sort of cliche, It is so true. Like, our life is the journey or whatever. If we're trying to
Yeah.
make the most of that, we shouldn't be making ourselves miserable to get to a destination that's going to last for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, whatever. It's about making yourself healthy, you know. And that's my second rant of the day, so I don't like that. I try to keep the rants to a minimum on this. Okay, so from a distance, you talked about it there a wee while ago in terms of how people can go into your welcome pack and then the next few documents they have and stuff. But how do you go about kind of monitoring progress? And obviously it depends on the person's goals and all that sort of stuff. Are you proper high tech? Do you track steps and or do you get proper high tech, or do you come down to just steps, or is it scales? Is it numbers in what they're lifting? How do you go about monitoring progress?
So for me, in terms of monitoring progress, like, I won't use just one variable. I think if you're only using one variable to monitor progress, you're just setting yourself up to get annoyed and frustrated. So like, depending on the individual, if somebody already has a smartwatch or a Fitbit, I'll track steps. I like to give people a step count. But again, with that, I will always say, it's like when we have our check-in, like my check-in sheet is very straightforward. It's literally just steps Monday to Sunday, but then a weekly total. So the reason why is like, well, there's going to come a time where, in life, there's a day you can't hit 10,000 steps, or 2 days you can't hit 10,000. But like, let's say take somebody who works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and 2 days that week they get asked to stay late, obviously pre-COVID, or if they're still working from home, they're stuck to the laptop till 7, 8 o'clock at night, and it gets to the stage where they're finished and they're just like, no, not happening tonight. It happens. We're human. Let's say they only had 5,000 steps both those days, so they're down 10,000 for the week. Well, come the weekend on Saturday or Sunday, they could go for an extra walk or add an extra 20 minutes onto their walk, whatever they're doing, and make up those steps. So, while they missed those for that 2 days, for the week, they've still hit their 70,000 mark. So I like to look at it as like over the course of a week, as opposed to like, yes, we'll track it day to day, more so I can see like their habits. Because like if somebody turns around to me and goes, oh, I didn't lose any weight this week, and it's like, okay, well, based off that information, I don't really know why. They can't turn around to me and go, oh, well, I didn't lose weight this week because, so if they're not tracking it and I'm not tracking it, we can't, the saying that comes to my mind is like, if it's not measured, it can't be managed. So, again, it's like if we track it day to day, we can tell, okay, grand, you hit 10,000 steps 3 days a week, then they dropped off towards the end of the week. Okay, that's probably why, because your calories are based off your activity levels dropped. Therefore, your calories, instead of being a slight deficit now, are your maintenance calories. And a lot of people don't realize that. Like, unless you're in an extreme deficit, which I wouldn't recommend for a lot of people, some subtle little factors like that changing can wipe it out. And suddenly you're at maintenance level where you're maintaining your body weight. And it's like, oh, well, why didn't I lose weight? It's like, well, because you're technically eating a maintenance now, because your expenditure dropped by half of what you were doing. So that's why. So we'll track steps. I also like to track sleep, not in a massive way. Literally mark out a 10 for your sleep. How was your sleep last night? 8. Perfect. I was at 3 that night. It wasn't great. It's like, okay, Grant, how did you feel the next day? It's like, oh, pretty tired. It's like, okay, Grant. Oh, well, I look at your macros here. It's like, oh, your calories actually went up a little that day. Oh, because you were tired and you probably had more cravings. Am I right? It's like, well, yeah, actually, yeah. It's like, okay, that's why. So let's look at why wasn't sleep good that night. It's like, oh, well, I went to bed and I was on my phone for 2 hours when I should have been on. It's like, okay, Grant, we need to take that habit out of there. What can we do to improve that? Can you turn your phone off at a certain time, or can you be on your phone earlier in the day so that when you go to bed, you're going to sleep? Like, there's all these factors that go into it. It's never just like, as much as like, and I've said to myself on Instagram, it's like, weight loss can simply be being in a calorie deficit for a consistent amount of time. But how somebody gets into the calorie deficit and stays there comes down to all these other habits. So, like, obviously, for some people, we'll track weight. For others, I don't. It depends on the individual. Like, if somebody comes to me and says, I have a bad relationship with the scales, get rid of it. We don't need it. We can measure it other ways. We'll do tape measures every second week, just because you're not going to see a massive difference week to week. But again, the main measures for me are tape measure, progress pictures. We'll track steps, we'll track nutrition, and we will track sleep. Sleep and steps are really straightforward if you have a smartwatch. If you don't have a smartwatch, I won't bother. I'm not going to go and tell somebody you need to invest in this. Just go for a 20-minute walk every day, make that a habit, and then we can see how your body reacts to it. And then if your goal is fat loss, we can adjust somewhere else to make that happen. But again, like it's all dependent on the individual. Like, there's some clients who I don't tell them to track nutrition at all. Like I have one client who he's 50, he's a powerlifter, so he's looking to break some records next year. I mean, he's hoping this year, but competitions have already been called off, I think. So he's looking at next year. And I'm like, okay, we need to. First thing we sorted out was the sleep, because the sleep was all over the place. So now, literally, anytime he marks a sleep, it's straight tens across the week. And he literally says, like, I've never felt so good because my sleep is on point. Perfect. We have that nailed to the point where that's just second nature now. So now it's like, okay, nutrition, let's get you eating 3 proper meals a day. I don't care what they are. I just want you eating 3 structured meals a day, to the point where he's got that down. It's like, okay, now we can start to look at what you're actually eating, because you have the habit of actually eating consistently. Let's look at what you're consuming now. And like, to the point that he literally turned around to me last week and goes, okay, I think I want to start tracking macros. I was like, perfect. Okay. So again, it's like, it's that whole thing. So I'm kind of leading them a little bit, where it's like, I'm not just going to make you do it straight away, because I know if I turn around, you've told me your sleep is poor, you don't really track food, you live off coffee. Me turning around to you going, okay, I expect you to get 8 hours of sleep a night and eat 4 meals a day consisting of chicken, broccoli, rice, whatever it is, the usual, that's not going to help him, because it's like, well, you've just completely changed like all his habits in one go and expect him to adjust them straight away. Whereas I went, okay, well, let's prioritize sleep first, because that's most important, because that's going to help you recover more from your training, improve your training, but in a nutrition point of view, you're going to have a better, I don't want to say control of nutrition, but you're going to control your cravings a lot more, because your body's feeling rested and recovered. It's not going to be like, oh, I need something quick for energy. And like, to the point where like that's like 8 weeks on, and like he's nailed sleep, his nutrition is getting better. And he's like, okay, let's start tracking calories too, because I'm seeing results already from doing these little habits. Let's see what happens when I go a step further. And it's him making that decision, not me. So there's times, like, again, it's, one thing I'll always say is like, it does depend on the individual. One thing to anyone, whether it's somebody thinking about working with a coach now, or even a coach listening to this, just be aware that the individual needs to determine these things. Because like, you taking somebody who has never weight trained and make them train 5 times a week, they're not going to last 2 weeks. They're going to be broken after 2 weeks of training, regardless of how intense it is, because they're not used to it. It's a new adaptation. It's a new stimulus that they're going to go, what the hell am I doing? Like, they won't be able to lift their arms, and they're like, so I have a baby at home I want to lift up, and I can't lift my arms past me. I'm walking around like this, and I'm like, how am I meant to pick the baby up? I was like, but it's this thing is like, there's all these other factors going on in people's lives that I think the hardcore gym goers are like, no, your life revolves around the gym. It's like, yeah, that's great for you, because you don't mind not having anyone else in your life. Most people who compete will tell you, like, when you're competing, it's a very lonely thing to do. Like, and it's a fact that a lot of people don't realize. Like, when I competed in my last show, it's like, I had my girlfriend, I worked, and that was it. Like, my day literally looked at, I'd be up at 5 a.m, I'd be into the gym for clients, I'd train, I'd do my cardio, I had low-calorie diets. By the time I got home, as my girlfriend says, like, I wasn't even cranky. I was that exhausted, I couldn't be angry. I was just like a zombie. So you're just a zombie, because I'd be up, work, like I was doing 60, 70 hours a week. And like, a lot of people, like, at the end of it, like, oh, geez, you look incredible. I was like, I'd love to get in shape like you. It's just like, no, you don't. You don't. Like, for me, like, I'm competitive, so I don't mind making that sacrifice. I'm lucky that I have a fiance who supports me, and we're very open about that sort of thing. But for 99% of people who go, oh, I'd love to be shredded like you, it's like, do you really though? Do you want the abs, or is it the admiration, or the praise that you get for doing it? And you have to make that clear to people. So again, like with clients, like I was going to say it earlier, it's like, what are their expectations? Your job as a coach is to make sure they have realistic expectations. So somebody coming to me going, I want to look like you did on stage. It's like, well, first of all, you're not me, so you won't look exactly like me. Secondly, you haven't been training for as long as I have. Like, I've been training since the age of 16, 17. I'm 30 now. You've only been training for 2 years. Now, you might, like, genetically, I'm not the most gifted. Like, a lot of, like, my, anyone who sees my physique from competing, it's hard work. Like, it's not, like, I'm not genetically gifted. Even for somebody who competes, like, most people look at me in the gym going, you're not that big. It's like, I'm not. But you have to be aware of all these other factors that play a role. So, like, you have somebody who can genetically look at a weight and get big. You have other people who genetically, no matter how much they eat, will struggle to put on weight. So again, it's just like managing expectations as a coach and being like, right, well, this is your expectation. This is how we're going to track it for you. Like, can you commit to this? It's like, yeah, no matter, perfect. Like, one thing I'll always say is, like, can you commit to it? It's like, if you can't do it, then I'm not going to make you, because you're just going to feel like you failed. There's something else we can do to track it. Like, that's why I have such a wide variety. Like, one thing I'll always, like, all of them will do progress pictures. We'll do them once a month. start of every month. I'm not going to have them doing it every week, because again, it just comes to the point where they're like, oh, I have to wake up on a Saturday and do a progress picture. Oh, I don't really want to. Whereas once a month, it's kind of like, oh yeah, Grant, I've done it now. It's out of the way for the month. I can do it next month. And then when they see kind of each month, they're like, oh, actually, no, it's a bit more of a difference. Whereas week to week, they might notice a difference, and that can play with people's minds, because they're like, why haven't I seen results? It's like, it's been 7 days. It's like, and most people don't realize that. It's like, for me, like, I can do progress pictures each week, because I know it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm not going to see a massive change, but if I look at week 1 and week 4, it's like, okay, well, there's a difference there. Now I see the change, and it's just having that expectation, kind of just having them understand it. It's just like, okay, what are your expectations? I want to get shredded. It's just like, okay, well, where you are now and what you want to do, it's going to take, at an extreme rate, it'll take you this long. At a smart rate, it'll take you this long. Which do you want to do? If you pick the extreme one, be aware that you're going to have low mood, low energy. You're going to feel like shit. You're not going to have any sex drive. There's all these factors that go into it that people just aren't aware of. And it's like, Instagram only show you the good side of things. Let's leave out all the bad. So it's, like, and even with Gem Pop, it's just like, you have clients turn around and go, oh, I'm eating, 800 calories a day. It's just like, you're not a baby. Like, you need to fuel your body. You're a full adult human being, a full grown adult human being. You need calories. Like, you can't, like, in most cases, like, I saw a great post there yesterday. Someone was like, if you're eating 1,200 calories and not losing weight, I can guarantee you, if you increase your calories, you'll start to lose weight. And like, the thing is people don't understand with low calorie diets is, like, they'll work for a while at the start, but eventually your body adapts to it. Your body wants to survive. And extreme calorie deficits are not healthy. So your body will turn around and go, okay, well, if you're only feeding us 800 calories, we need to make sure that we can live off that 800 calories. So what are we going to do? Well, what's not vital for survival? Well, we don't need to have sex, Grant. So we'll lower our, for males, we lower our testosterone production. So we're not going to want to have sex. We'll have no libido. We're going to start to, anytime, like, one thing I did was I tried really hard not to, but I got in the habit of doing it when I was prepping, was I'd lean anytime. So if I was with a client, the first time around, because I wasn't prepared for it, I'd be leaning on equipment like that going, yeah, I'd be coaching like this, and I wouldn't even notice it, because I'd be like, I'd still be coaching, like, they'd still have my full attention, but I'd be leaning to hold myself up. And like, it wasn't until, like, I think like 3 weeks out from the show, one of my clients said to me, are you okay? It's just like, yeah, why? It's just like, you're literally holding that machine up. It's just like, oh crap, okay. So it's like, yeah. It's like, so you do, like, there's factors like that people just don't, and there's the hardcore bodybuilders who don't want to admit to it. It's like, I don't want to seem weak. It's just like, well, no, you're in an extreme calorie deficit. Like, you're going for something that most people wouldn't think of. But then you have the confusion of, well, oh, so this guy did it to get in shape for a show, so I have to do it to lose 10 pounds. It's just like, no, you don't. You can lose that 10 pounds quite comfortably if you're consistent and address one or two habits and just have patience. And that's the thing, like, with the measurements, or the way of tracking things, it's just like, well, let's find what works for you. Yes, we'll have, the main one is the progress pictures. After that, I will be flexible with certain things depending on the individual.
I think just as we were chatting there, I jotted down 2 words, and the words were drilling down. And it seemed to be that you talked about your client who was the power lifter, and he was having, but I'm not sure if it was the same client, but he was the guy who was having the calories went up on one day, worked back, sleeping was bad the night before, and then you try to fix the sleep. But even then, by fixing the sleep, you're going back to the next day, are you having too much coffee? And why was the sleep bad? And you're drilling back down till you find the exact reason, and you're getting back to it. As opposed to, and please forgive me for reverting back to the weight loss clubs, but it's a little bit better than stepping on a scale in front of 10 other people and them throwing rotten vegetables at you and booing because you didn't lose weight that week. And it just feels like there's that way of, it's individualized, it's cross dimensional. There's different things that you're measuring. It's not just this one weighing once a week, and it's like, shit, I had a terrible week because for some reason the number didn't move on this stupid scale that's in front of me. Yeah. And I think that's rat number 3. I don't think I've ever scored a hat trick on this podcast.
You're going to start me off. As soon as you mentioned the weighing scales and everyone watching, I immediately just start that bloody Operation Transformation crap. Like, it's just like, Dave has lost 2 pounds and his target was 3. He's failed. It's just like, No, he's not. He succeeded. He's lost 2 more pounds than he would have. What are you talking about? Stop being stupid. Just like, and again, I understand that's TV and it's there for entertainment. It's like, oh, Dave Stress stepping on the scales. Of course he's stepping on the scales in front of the entire nation with no top on, and he's self-conscious. What do you expect to happen? You know, it's just stuff like that. I'm just like, oh, just common sense isn't so common anymore. And
Yeah, but you also say that it's a TV show and it's for entertainment, but that's where a lot of people get their information from. That's one of the major problems, is that the stuff that it gets cut down into 30 minutes or an hour TV slots are where people get their information, and it's just that's how they believe everything should be, and that's how they believe they should go about their fitness journey.
Yeah,
no, go on. Sorry,
I was just going to say that's why I put such an emphasis on educating the clients, because it's like, unfortunately, like, you can't control what's put on the TV. Like, you can't control, like, Operation Transformation's there, as you say, for entertainment purposes, or as I said as well. It's like, there's times I kind of, like, I don't watch it, but I've seen clips of it, and like, I can remember one where, like, there was this woman who was obviously, you know, obese. She's trying to lose weight. She's trying her hardest. You know, the effort's there, and they had her doing, I think it was like running or sprinting on the spot or something. She's like, I've shin splints, my shins are killing me. And, you know, your man Carl Henry's like, oh, keep going, keep going. So it's like, no, don't keep going. Her joints are already taking a beating, and you having her do something like that is just adding pressure to it. And that's why I'm so big on education. It's because it's like, if you don't understand force production and exercise mechanics as a trainer, you can be causing more harm than good. And having somebody who is overweight, who's already coming to you going, yeah, my knees hurt, my hips hurt, my back hurts, you making them do exercises that just add to it don't help. You're just going to make the issue worse. You're just going to make them hate the process more. And inevitably, they're going to give up because they think they're a failure without realizing it's like, well, no, I just didn't have the right guidance. So like, when it comes to stuff like that, it's like, one thing I'll always say to people is like, don't just take your source, your information from one source, especially if it's an entertainment. If it's from the TV, or, you know, it's, you know, a TV show, a documentary, you know, a YouTuber who isn't, you know, somebody who is an actual coach, who coaches people, who has a reputation, take it with a pinch of salt. Do your education on it. Look it up and go, okay, should I actually be doing this? You know, as you kind of said earlier on, it's like, all the information is out there in Google, and at times there is too much that you can just go, you look at all this, go, what one do I go with? What do I believe? Like, where do I go? Which way? Like, paralysis by analysis. You just overanalyze everything to the point where you do nothing. And it's that sort of thing. It's like I could go into the rant being like, I think everyone should do better from a coaching point of view, but unfortunately, you are always going to have people in the industry who are just like, a quick buck, I just want to make some money, get out, happy enough. But just be aware that, you know, if you're somebody listening to this going like, oh, I'm looking for a coach, like, do your research. Talk to a few coaches. Most coaches nowadays, most good coaches, I should say, offer free consultation calls. Jump on a 15-minute call with somebody. Go, oh, this is what I'm looking to do. How can you help me? If there isn't wiggle room or there's no flexibility in terms of what helps you, like, now there are going to be times where you are going to have to just admit that, okay, there are some things you have to do that you're not going to be 100% like. There is a give and take. Like, you know, I kind of put up a post there the other day. It's like, there's no growth without change. Like, something has to change. But if somebody tries to completely change everything all at once, you know, it's like trying to change the 4 wheels on your car at the same time. You know, if you have you're broke down the side of the road, all 4 wheels are flat, you're on your own, you only have a little jack, and you can only change one at a time. You have to take your time doing it. So think of your fitness journey like that. It's like, I'm going to start with one little thing, change that habit, then move on to the next. As opposed to with those shows where it's just like, you know, was it Australia's Biggest Loser, America's Biggest Loser, and they have, like, you know, people eating 1,400 calories, and it's just like, no, it's not going to work. Like,
you make the analogy, but it often feels like people are trying to change the 4 wheels of the tire while they're going 120 down a motorway. So, like, that seems to be where people are trying to do, especially when they're following Instagram influencers and all that rubbish. Yeah. And on that note, look, so one thing that we're going to try and start doing is building up a bit of a playlist for the Gym Advisors podcast. Cillian, what are your 3 favourite songs to have on in the background? And obviously, I have to hold you to 3, so none of this nonsense of honourable mentions and all that sort of stuff. I want 3, and we're going to stick with that. So go on, give us a shout away.
I was ready for this one, so I have my current playlist out, and it's just like, my playlist is very rap heavy, I should say. So I do apologize if anyone doesn't like bad language and that, but actually, first right out of the gate, Eminem, Till I Collapse. Has to be.
Cause I'm at the end of my wits with half the shit that gets in. I got a list, here's the order of my list that it's in. It goes Reggie, Jay-Z, Tupac, and Biggie. Andre from Outkast, Jada, Corrupt, Nas, and Thimmy. But in this industry, I'm the cause of a lot of envy.
If that doesn't get you fired up in the gym, I don't know what will. Then I'd have to go with, it's probably a song most people haven't heard, or it's an old enough song, but Lupe Fiasco, Words I Never Said. And then one thing I'm loving at the moment, really, really old school, LL Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out.
You have come up with some tunes there. I think you've not for the first person we've asked about this, Cillian, and you have knocked it out of the park. So thanks very much, man.
No pressure for everyone else then.
Yeah, there's a lot to live up to.
That's somebody come in with a completely different genre now and ruin the whole playlist.
Look, that's what we're here for. We want the wildest variety of music that's going to be blaring in people's ears in a few weeks' time when we launch this out. So, Cillian, look, as I said, this kind of podcast and this series that we're doing specifically with online coaches is about the online fitness section that we're releasing. So when you go on to thegymadvisors.ie, hit the online fitness option, and you will be given at the maximum of 6 multiple choice questions, and we will instantly show you the profiles of people who suit you. For yourself, Cillian, I would recommend, from what we're talking about here, you're an online coach, you were hands-on or very hands-on, one or the other. You help with exercise and nutrition. You definitely build sustainable habits over kind of very quick results. And you work with people on an 8 weeks plus basis. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Nice one, Cillian. So that's what you would do. You'd answer those questions and you will see Cillian's profile pop up. You can, of course, find them as well just by searching on the normal section, the normal side of things. But Cillian, you are also on social media if people want to give you a shout there, if you want to point people in the right direction.
Yes, I pretty much only use Instagram. I do have a Facebook, but I don't really use it, to be honest with you. So on Instagram, it's Cillian Lewins Coaching. Really straightforward, all one word. And that's where you'll find me. I'll post. I try to stay consistent with posting, but there's times I'm just like not in the mood for Instagram today, so I don't. But one thing I'll say is I do always try to add value with what I do post. So that's the least I can say.
That is definitely, and you are consistent though, and you are definitely someone who does add value. There's a lot of people out there who don't, but I would recommend that you, or say that you definitely do. I learn a lot from you anyway, we'll say that much. Cillian, man, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Cheers. Thank you, Andy.
To the rest of you though, as always, hustle the fitness, baby.